Oh, live. Good evening, everybody. Keith Engle here for TGI Sports Talks College Sports Huddle. How's everybody doing tonight? Whoa. What happened? We had a little... I apologize. We had a little issue there. Welcome to TGI Sports Talks College Football Huddle. I thought it was the StreamYard feed. My phone was on, and I started hearing myself on delay. So welcome, everybody, watching on the McGrath Podcast Network, everybody on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Check out the McGrath Podcast Network, guys. There's a lot of great shows, not just my shows, but the guys, Brian and James and Bo and Sonia. My partner, Jack, is on a bunch of shows besides the one he does with me. Great stuff. Check out all those shows. And real quick, let's give Jack a quick shout out. Check out his new book, Michael Jinx Spinks, by Jack Hirsch. He is now an official biographer of Michael Spinks, and we're proud of our colleague for being in that company. So great job, Jack, in the book. I'm about halfway through. Great job on the book. We welcome everybody on, again, all of the platforms that we're on, all the groups that allow us to share the show later. You see some of our favorites scrolling. They're not the only ones. Obviously, there's dozens of them. But John Gonzalez at the Sports Authorities, Greg Rawlings at America's Pastime, Flo and Can. Are we still playing music? Flo and Can at Bottom Line Sports. Let's Talk Sports, doing a great job over there. Tanner D and the gang. Ken Kraus at Golf Buds Sports of all sorts. And of course, a quick shout out to Ralph Williams at RW Media. Ralph does some great stuff, specifically the Sports Corner that he does every Tuesday from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern with his partner, Smokin' Jim Frazier. I was a guest with them yesterday at 4 p.m. You can still see that on my page if you want to see it, either one of my pages. We talk some NFL draft stuff. Tonight, we got mostly college basketball. There's some football news to talk about, but we got some big games coming tomorrow night, Friday night. We'll get into those. We'll look at some of the highlights of the first two rounds of this tournament. No real Cinderellas unless you want to look at, Cinderella dead. I said on the last show, we're still going to see, 9, 10, and 11, 12 seeds advance to the Sweet 16 and Elite 8. They're just going to be from power conferences, right? You can look at Iowa. You can look at Nebraska as Cinderellas. I look at Nebraska as a Cinderella. When you've never been to a Sweet 16 in the entire history of your school, I guess I got to say that they're a Cinderella. But some great stories from the first few days. Hello, Paul. Good to have you with us, Paul Spada. Some great stories. Listen, the top ones for me, and say what you want. There's others that make it. The Kentucky shot at the end of regulation that sent Santa Clara home, basically, as it went to overtime and ended up winning. That was a great highlight of this first round. High Point winning their first NCAA game ever in an upset and playing very well in round two, even though they didn't move on. There was the missed shot at the end of the Vandy and what game was that? I'm trying to read my own writing now. I can't read it. Oh, Nebraska Vanderbilt, right? Nebraska Vanderbilt. That game was an exciting game, and Vanderbilt ended up kind of rimming out a half-court shot, almost shocking the world there. VCU's comeback against North Carolina that ultimately cost Hubert Davis his job. We'll talk about that. And Iowa with that last-second three, just well-developed, well-designed play by McCollum, their coach, and the players executed it perfectly. And Florida did not defend it well. So some great games there, and some great games coming up here in the Sweet 16. We've got some Elite 8. We've got regional final type matchups in this round. I mean, you've got Friday night, you got St. John's and Duke, you got Michigan, UConn, even Alabama, Michigan. not so much historically, right? But those feel like some of those feel Arizona and Arkansas. These have the feel historically of Elite Eight type matchups. Even Houston, Illinois. Great. This is a great Sweet 16. And I think we got some great players and great stories in this tournament. We'll see who. Again, Nebraska winning would be another minute before midnight for Cinderella, if you will, added or subtracted, I guess. But we'll look at all those games. I'll give you my picks. We'll talk about the coaching carousel. Hubert Davis fired officially today at North Carolina. A lot of coaches, some of them still coaching. TJ, what's TJ? I can never say TJ's last name without looking at it. From Iowa State. I've got to look at it to say it. And then it's shaky sometimes as well. Otzelberger. See, I can't say TJ's last name. He's going to come up in this conversation. Nate Oates is going to come up in this conversation. Todd Golden. They're going outside of the family, if you will, at North Carolina for the first time since Dean Smith came there in 1960 what? 1960? When did Dean Smith come to? When did Dean Smith get to Carolina? How are you, Dean? 50. I'm sorry, he was an assistant. He got to Kansas in 1958. He comes as a assistant coach. He gets a head job in 1961. They have not gone outside of the family after that. Dean Smith, Bill Guthridge. Doherty, Roy Williams, Hubert Davis. Hubert Davis really didn't want this job by all accounts when he was anointed by Roy Williams. He'd been on his staff for 8 or so years. So we'll look at the rest of the coaching carousel as well. Syracuse has a new coach, and I think they did a great job. I knew when Jerry McNamara had gotten Siena here locally. Once he won the MAC, and it was obvious Adrian Autry was going to get fired, I thought Jerry McNamara was a natural candidate to go home to Syracuse. Again, there hasn't been anybody outside the family because, first of all, I mean, Boeheim was there nearly 50 years. So he succeeded Hartsfield, and Adrian Autry succeeded him, and I felt they would stay in. Boeheim talked about not going outside the family, but nobody made as much sense as Jerry McNamara. Plus, the Syracuse job, not as attractive as it might have been a few years ago, as they have not had an influx of NIL money to spend. The resources are not there that are there in the rest of the ACC. I think the hiring of Jerry McNamara will reignite the passion for Syracuse basketball and get money flowing into that program. And the stars aligned. He was the right guy. And it's easier to beat a guy. I've always say this, right? It's very hard to beat a guy that fouls a guy. So the guy that fouls the guy to foul the guy, if that makes any sense, has got a big leg up. Plus, Adrian Autry was a fine player in his college days, but he's not kind of the folk hero that Jerry McNamara is. He will be really embraced by the fan base there. Good evening, Rick. How are you? Who's watching the NITs? Got time for that. I'm waiting for Yankee baseball on Netflix. Good grief. Anyway, some other coaching news too before we dive into where's my coaching carousel here? I mean, lots of stuff has gone on here. We talked about North Carolina. That's going to be very interesting to see what happens there. And we got some guys who have gotten jobs in the last couple of days. We talked about GMAC going to Syracuse. Listen, Siena's going to have some big shoes to fill. And historically, when a guy has done well at Siena, Mike Dean, Paul Hewitt, Louis Orr to a lesser extent than those two guys. Fran McCaffrey. The next guys struggle. The next guy, at least one guy struggles, or two guys struggle. But there's some names, interesting names getting thrown out there. Bobby Hurley's name has come up. Mike Hopkins' name has come up, who also is in the running for the Syracuse job. He was anointed. If you remember, Mike Hopkins was anointed Jim Boeheim's successor. And even Boeheim had given a year he was going to retire, and then he changed his mind. And Mike Hopkins left the program, went to Washington, where he kind of flamed out, won NCAA appearance, and moves on. Let's see if I can get a good feel for what's going on here. Here's the what's out. Bobby Hurley's out at Arizona State, as we know. Randy Bennett from St. Mary's done a great job at St. Mary's. 60 years old, a little old, you would think, to get started in a major conference and with a major team. But he's had his program has done great at St. Mary's. We'll see if that can carry over. He got some heat this last week after his team went out in the first round of the NCAA tournament for kind of calling his players out, and saying they didn't compete, and it was so what? Thicker skin. Thad Matta has retired. Might have been pushed out the door at Butler. It was his second. He started at Butler, if you remember, and this was his second go around there. It didn't go as well. He was only 63 and 69. Akron coach John Groce has been mentioned a lot for this, and former Butler guard Ronald Norad as well. Boston College has fired Earl Grant, as we know, former VCU coach. He's fired. UConn assistant Luke Murray has been talked about for this game. John Becker, both talked about. Did somebody get hired here, though? I'm thinking about Providence. Sorry. Providence hired the South Florida coach, which we'll get to in a second. At Cincinnati, Wes Miller is out. Wes Miller's name will come up for the Butler job probably, and maybe some others. And actually, I take that back. He signed with Charlotte, now that I think about it. So he's gone. Jared Calhoun, with 2 years he spent at Utah State and did very, very, very well. He is now the coach at Cincinnati. Creighton, Greg McDermott stepped aside, and there is a succession plan in place there. And his top assistant, Alan Huss, has taken over. Succession plans kind of don't always go the way they're supposed to go. So we'll see how that works out. You saw what happened in Auburn this year, and Bruce Pearl kind of put the university on a tough spot. He quit, after all the coaches have been hired, and his son Steve Pearl gets the job. So anyway, we'll see how Creighton does. Greg McDermott, really accomplished coach. Creighton hasn't been as successful especially this past year, as they would like to be. And I think you'll see that he does very well. But good career for McDermott, and we wish him the best. Damon Stoudemire out at Georgia Tech. Scott Cross is in that job. Georgia Tech has really taken a hit in the ACC the last 30 years, probably since Bobby Cremins left. I don't think Georgia Tech has really had that many competitive seasons in the ACC, and we'll see if Scott Cross can turn that around. Kansas State, Jerome Tang is out, as we know. Got fired in the middle of the season again after kind of calling out his players, and he was fired for cause for it. Casey Alexander is in that position. Listen, K-State has had Tang did well there in his first season. Went to the Sweet 16, I believe, and it's gone downhill since then. So we'll see whether they can compete in a loaded Big 12. Kim English fired at Providence after three really unproductive seasons. Brian Hodgson from South Florida, who did a really good job there. A lot of talk about him going to Syracuse, as he's from Western New York, but he ends up in Providence. Sources do say that this team is Kim English recruited well. If Hodgson can keep the kids there, they've also got 30 million or 10 million, excuse me, to spend in the portal. So we'll see how that works out. We talked about Syracuse already. Air Force, Joe Scott's out. Joe Crispin is in the mid majors. Ball State, Mike Lewis is out. Chris Capo is in. Belmont, Casey Alexander, who went to K-State, is out. Evan Braids is in. Or else nobody cares about that one. Charlotte, we said Wes Miller's in with the new coach there. Dartmouth fired their coach. David McAuliffe, Eastern Michigan. Stan Heath, former coach of Arkansas, is out, and Billy Donlin is in. Jeremy Ballard out at FIU. Georgia State fires their coach. Kansas City fires their coach. Lamar fires their coach. Travis Ford, by the way, gets the Arkansas Little Rock job. Travis Ford, who had coached at Oklahoma State. I think he also coached at Xavier, if I'm not mistaken, and was a former pretty good point guard in his day as well. Anything else? We talked about Utah State. Gerard Calhoun is out. They're going to have to find a replacement for him. Very successful coach. And the rest are not. Oregon State fires Wayne Tinkle. Justin Joyner is in. They'll be heading back to the new Pac-12 this coming year. Pepperdine fires Ed Schilling. San Diego fires Steve Lavin, who you'll remember, coached UCLA, coached St. John's. In is J.R. Blunt there. Randy Bennett, we talked about, out. Mickey McConnell will be in, and he was one of the top assistants for Randy Bennett. Siena looking to replace Jerry McNamara, of course. South Florida looking to replace Brian Hodges. St. Bonaventure. It looks like Mark Schmidt was forced out and didn't retire the way it was reported, but either way, he's out. Billy Gillespie, whose name you might remember, is out at Tarleton State. Texas Tech fires their coach. I'm looking for anything that might be of interest here as we scroll down. A lot of turnover this year, man. You don't get much chance. Not a Badger fan. Hello, Chris. How are you? Years back, a certain basketball team in Toronto played a mail-it inning game against last place team, and Toronto won by a landslide. And after the game, the coach tore his team into shreds. Well, I think you should be able to do these things, man. These kids aren't kids anymore. They're men. Especially when you think about the money that they're making. A certain amount of effort can be expected and execution. I'm not necessarily for calling guys out in public all the time, but there's a time and a place for it. And Randy Bennett, again, it doesn't seem to have hurt him because he's gotten a job at Arizona State, making a whole lot more money than he was making at St. Mary's. So kudos to him. What other news do we have in college basketball? Bill Self, I talked about the other night, the other day and the other night. Danny Fuller's talked about the fact he looks tired. He's had health issues. This year was not a hard issue. In the past, he's had some hard issues. Had enough of, what the landscape has become in big-time college basketball. He didn't say he was going to retire, but he did say he needed to reflect on it and talk to his family. Today, he's denying a retirement. Rumors is bad info. I still got a feeling you might see some movement on that here in the coming weeks. We'll see what happens there. In some other news, the Iowa players say they were fired up when their head coach, McCollum, had kind of gotten into a little beef with Todd Golden. When there was to me, the play was nothing. If you look at it, they thought there was a punch thrown and landed, and there really wasn't. But Todd Golden was hot, was going after the Iowa bench. McCollum was screaming back at him. Iowa players say that was, for them, a turning point in that game and really fired them up. So we'll see how that goes. We know that Hubert Davis fired today. One of the guys, Golden, who we just talked about, is going to be talked about for that job. The guy I really think that would be a great fit, but he doesn't seem to want to coach, is oh God, Brad, come on, help me out. Oh. This is where I get upset about my age. It's when I can't get my mind working correctly. Oh my God, the former Butler coach, the Boston GM. Isn't that terrible? God, man. Isn't that terrible? I'll get it. I'm going to get it. I'm going to beat myself when I see it. Brad Stevens, Jesus. Brad Stevens did a great job at Butler. And then he coached the Celtics into the playoffs every year, but once maybe. And he kicked himself upstairs. I don't know. The Celtics are playing well, and he seems to have a good spot where he is. Is he going to want to dive back in to this world? He didn't leave the same world when he left college coaching in around 2012. So we'll see what happens there. But they are trying to sign Todd Golden, I should say, to a new contract at Florida, by the way. Brad Stevens, Todd Golden, TJ Otzenberger, Nate Oates. These guys are all going to be mentioned for this game. There's not a North Carolina guy that really fits this job. Hubert Davis didn't fit this job. He didn't want it. He was reluctant. And look at, I haven't always been the biggest Hubert Davis backer in the whole world, but this team hasn't been awful. I mean, they went 24-7 this year. Am I right? This shows you how tough it is in the world of college basketball today, that the expectations from day one are very difficult. I mean, here's his stats. He went his first year, he goes 29-10, and has a surprise run to the NCAA final. And he's a national runner-up. He goes 23-10, 11. He's 15-5 the first year in conference, 11-9, 23-13 overall. They decline an NIT invitation. His third year, they go 29-8, 17-3, and win the ACC and go to the Sweet 16. He's out. 23-14 last year, not a good year for them. 13-7 in the conference, but 24-9. I mean, this is not a horrible record, but more is expected at North Carolina than somewhere else. And Hubert Davis, unfortunately, found that out this week. What else? Arkansas's Acuff on the financial side of this, he signed a huge, I think a record-setting deal with Reebok. He's 19 years old, hasn't been drafted yet, but he has signed with Reebok, and the report is, where is it? Well, I guess the record is he's the first NCAA men's athlete to receive a shoe contract with a national brand. Reebok is, again, not as big as it once was, but he has signed a big deal with them. And I don't know that the terms have been released, but August 2024, Cooper Flagg signed an endorsement deal with New Balance while he was a 17-year-old rising high school senior. So he actually did it before he became a college star. Acuff is not going to be at Arkansas another year, by the way. He's going to be one of the top 3 picks in the NBA draft, maybe the number 1 pick. We'll see how that goes. But interesting development there. Before I get into the games, I mean, what else have we got going on here? In college football, we got people suing. You know, the other thing that's going to come up here now, because we got guys suing to stay in school. Chandler Morris is suing to get another year of eligibility. I think a 7th year, if I'm not mistaken. We've had other players suing to stay in school. I read an article today that it's fully expected that if not this year, then very soon we're going to see a player drafted in the NBA draft or the NFL draft who doesn't make a team or gets cut, looking to go back and extend his college eligibility and suing to do that. We already had some NBA players who played in the G League come back. We've had guys who have played professionally in Europe come back and play in college basketball. John Calipari talked about it the other day. You know, he talked about the fact that he's recruiting high school kids while everybody else, and it's not everybody else. And John, let's not make yourself out to be, Saint Calipari. But a lot of these coaches are recruiting professional players, guys who played professionally in Europe, have played in the G League here in the NBA, and aren't really focusing on high school kids at all. So we're heading to a place where you're going to see kids get drafted in the NBA or the NFL, not make a team, and want to come back for if they've got one or two, or who knows how much eligibility they might have left. And you'll see lawsuits likely for them to try to make that happen. So just kind of sucks, right? And college football, by the way, will be moving up the start of their season in 2027 by 1 week. Probably the first step in being able to move the college football playoff and get the final played as close to January 1st as you can. That's probably not realistic, but January 8th certainly is, or that week. Army, Navy is another obstacle there. And because of the conversation about moving the date of Army, Navy, the president signed an executive order for Army, Navy to keep an exclusive window for their game which no other team can play. Again, the discussion that's happened has really only happened on the Army side, that they're willing to move the game to Thanksgiving week, maybe Black Friday, maybe Thanksgiving night, but they don't want to give up their exclusivity as well. They want to keep that 3 or 4 hour window where no other game is being played, pro or college. That's been one of the problems now. And again, I'm all for keeping this tradition alive, and Army, Navy having that stage to play on that they've had now, the week after the conference finals. I don't know whether they can make it happen or not. I mean, them playing now after the conference finals is already a little awkward. We haven't had the ultimate awkwardness of these two teams that play in the same conference playing after their conference title game is played. The game right now has not been a conference game, even though they're playing now in the same conference. So we'll see how that plays out. What else? You guys are quiet tonight. What's going on? Welcome to TGI Sports Talk, our college sports huddle. We're going to get into the Sweet 16 right now, and we're going to talk about some of these games and some of the things that have gone on up until now. And there's some heavyweight matchups in this game, heavyweight coaching matchups, and heavyweight there's interesting coaching matchups all over the place. Start Thursday night, Texas and Purdue. You've got Miller against Painter, two very accomplished coaches. Miller, who's had a great run at Arizona, chased around similarly to Will Wade at LSU, chased around by the FBI for a couple of years, doing things that are totally legal now, by the way. And he kind of that in I should say a dip in the success at Arizona cost him his job there. But these are two very accomplished coaches. Texas been on a really good run. One of the last at-large teams in this field again, am I calling this number 11 team that has had to play in the first four a Cinderella? No, it's Texas. They've been in the Final Four before with Rick Barnes as a coach. They play in one of the best basketball conferences in the country. How do you call them a Cinderella? I like Purdue to be able to win this game. I think Purdue is just a more complete team. I'm going to give Painter the coaching edge over Miller, and we'll see how that works out. What do you got here? Michael Gott from the UK. You have a college football game over here in the UK at Wembley Stadium in September. The Union Jack game. Arizona State and Kansas. You know what? They've opened up in Ireland the last couple of years. Michael, Notre Dame played Georgia Tech there 2 years ago, I think. Kansas State played there this year and lost. It was Kansas State and Iowa State. Iowa State won that game and started a bad year for Kansas State. So at least the last 2 years they've opened up in Ireland, and I thought I'd heard they were going to open up in England this year, and I hope you get a chance to go to the game. I mean, I'm assuming the configuration of these games, and they played in Wembley, right? The NFL's played in Wembley. Kansas, Lance Leopold's a really good coach. Arizona State, Dillingham, a really good coach. And listen, Arizona State's been in the playoff 2 years ago and competed to get there again this past year. And Kenny Dillingham was one of the most sought after coaches for some of the bigger schools, and he stayed put at Arizona State. So that'll be an interesting game for you to get tickets to. Hope you get them, my friend. And thanks for being with us at the 12:30 hour there in England, I believe, right? That's AM, folks. Paul Spade is captivated by my awesomeness. Dumbfounded by my stupidity would sound more. In any event, thank you, Paul. It's all good. We got a good crowd. We've had a good crowd in and out. But this isn't always Earl. Here's Earl Stye. If I'm saying your name right, Earl, say hello. Let us know who your team is. John Gonzalez is out there. I don't know where John roots in college. I know he's a Miami, the U fan in football. John, if you're with us, let me know where your allegiances lie. I'm not sure I'm remembering where they lie in college basketball. Anyway, the 7:30, the second early game, I should say, I guess, Thursday night is Iowa against Nebraska. If you could have got a future bet on Iowa playing Nebraska at any point in this tournament, I think it would the odds would have been so long that you'd be really smiling and probably planning a couple of vacations or buying a new car or a new house, much less them playing in a Sweet 16. Neither one of these teams has been here. Nebraska's never been here. Iowa hasn't been here in 20-ish years. And they're two schools much better known for football than they are basketball. Iowa's had some success. Remember, Lute Olson was coaching there in the 80s and got them to a Final Four with Ronnie Lester before he moved on to Arizona and won national championships. Steve Alford had a good run there. Fran McCaffrey, former Siena coach, had a moderately successful run the last 10 years or so at Iowa. Could never get over the hump. So this is unlikely. I mean, if you're talking about Cinderellas, we could talk about these teams. And even though the 9 is Iowa and the 4 is Nebraska, Nebraska has more of a feel of a Cinderella and underdog than Iowa. Fred Hoiberg has done a great job there, getting their first NCAA win. They've been in very few NCAA tournaments with a long history. So great job there. And I like Nebraska to win this game. Iowa, again, well coached. McCollum did a great job to knock off the number 1 seed, Florida, on Sunday. Tremendous job staying in that game. And then that last play they designed was just perfection. It was executed to perfection. It was drawn up to perfection. And really, it's one of the big moments of the first two rounds of this tournament for me. We talked about Acuff and Arkansas and Coach Calipari. They get to match up with probably the best team, the most balanced team left in this tournament in Arizona. Arkansas's had a good run this year, only 8 losses, 28 to go against 28 wins. They did win the SEC tournament. And Coach Cal has done a great job getting this program, turned back around. Remember, this was a program when Nolan Richardson was there that was, one of the models for building a program, rebuilding a program, if you will. They got the back-to-back championship games, won one, lost one to UCLA. But 40 minutes of hell, and there's a lot of guys coaching 40 minutes of hell right now. You're going to see a lot of pressing in this game. You're going to see a lot of pressing in the St. John's game, which we'll talk about in a second. But I do like Arizona to move on here. I think Arkansas gives them everything that they can handle. But I think our Arizona will have enough. And by the way, Tommy Lloyd's name is going to come up in this North Carolina search as well. I don't know that you leave Arizona at this point to go to North Carolina, though. Expectations are going to be like through the roof. And the last game Thursday night is really intriguing as well, as Illinois with maybe the best offense or one of the best offenses in the country, efficiency-wise, well coached by Bruce Underwood. Again, look at the coaches here, the coaching matchups. Underwood against Kelvin Sampson. Houston's been on fire since Kelvin Sampson has rebuilt this program. The last 3, 4, 5 years have been really, really exciting. They barely lost the national championship game last year. They got a chance to get back. I'll redo my bracket here with you guys here in just a few minutes. But I'm just going to do these games Thursday, Friday, and then we'll go back and I'll do the rest of the bracket out. So you have my predictions. But this is a classic matchup of offense against defense. If Houston can play defense like they normally do and not run into a place where they don't put the ball in the hole for, 6, 7, 8 minutes and then fall way behind Illinois, that would be the only way they lose this game. I think Houston wins this game. And then Friday night, you've got some heavyweights here. Let me look at the coaching matchups one more time on Thursday night. So you got Miller against Painter. You've got two relative newcomers to the big time, really good coaches, and they've been around a bit in Hoiberg and McCollum for Iowa and Nebraska. So that's good. You've got Lloyd, who's a rising star in the sport, against a guy who's been a star in the sport forever, and Calipari. And at Illinois, you got Bruce Underwood against Houston's Kelvin Sampson. Love the coaching matchups here. Look at the coaching matchups on Friday. Rising star John Shire done a great job at Duke against one of the all-time greats. Love him or hate him. Pitino, Calipari, they're all-time greats. Pitino's won championships at 2 different schools. He's been to the Sweet 16 with 4 different schools. He's been to the Final Four with 3 different schools. Maybe about to be a 4th. We'll see. But St. John's against Duke is a classic. This is a regional final level game. And you saw St. John's and Kansas play a great game right down to the finish. St. John's pulled away by 14. But Kansas, they felt they did what they had to do to get back in the game. They played St. John's game and turned it around against them. They pressed. St. John's couldn't control the press. It felt like we were seeing more air balls than we were seeing baskets for a while, especially out of St. John's. If St. John's loses this game, it's because they don't shoot the ball that well. They only shot 38% on Sunday, but they hit the offensive boards. They press at 94 feet. They're going to press pretty much the whole game. That's Pitino style. That's very similar to the 40 minutes of hell that Nola Richardson threw at people at Arkansas those years ago. Duke, I think the ultimate turning point in this game is going to be the fact that Caleb Foster is not going to play. There's some talk he might try to give it a go, but listen, this doesn't sound like him playing, at 60%, I don't think is going to help them. It might help them less than him not playing at all. But him not being in this game and maybe Duke not being able to handle his press as well as they might like to, I think is going to be the deciding factor in this game. And I think St. John's moves on to the regional final. Alabama, Michigan. Nate Oates, another guy who's going to come up for the North Carolina job. Two again, rising stars. Nate Oates' stars kind of already here, but still on the ascent. Dusty May got a Florida Atlantic team to the Final Four just 3 or 4 years ago, took the Michigan job last year, and has turned this program around. It was turning into a disaster under Juwan Howard. This team's 33-3. That said, this is going to be an interesting game. And if Alabama can keep it close and be in the game in the last few seconds, they'll have a chance to win it, obviously. I don't think it's going to happen. I think Alabama stays with them for a bit, but I think Michigan pulls away late in this game. So let's move Michigan forward. UConn and Michigan State. Tom Izzo, Danny Hurley. Danny Hurley just won back-to-back championships just 2 years ago. A lot of people don't like Danny Hurley, complains too much, works the refs, blames the refs. He's a great basketball coach. You say what you want. Tom Izzo, his teams play with the same grit that he shows. I'm assuming he showed as a player under Judd Heathcote. This guy has been one of the more successful March coaches. Now, I know he's only won one national championship, but he's been there 2 other times in the final. He's been to a bunch of Final Fours. I think this team is ready to compete against UConn. And UConn, again, had its struggles. They only lost 5 games all year. But I can't get out of my head how bad they looked against St. John's in the Big East final. And I think Michigan State moves on with a bit of an upset. Not much. UConn's only 1.5 favored. The last game Friday night is Tennessee and Iowa State. TJ Altenberger done a great job. Again, Iowa State will have everything they can do to hold on to him if North Carolina comes calling. He's done a great job at Iowa State. Not a hotbed for college basketball, just like it wasn't a hotbed for college football, and Matt Campbell did well. I would say TJ's up has really probably moved ahead of what Matt Campbell accomplished at Iowa State. With that said, this might be Rick Barnes. I know they lost 11 games. They played in a very tough SEC, obviously. And again, the Big 12 is not easy either. But I like what I saw against Virginia with Tennessee. Rick Barnes' teams always have suffocating defenses, but have trouble putting the ball in the basket. This team has showed a better propensity for scoring than maybe any of the Rick Barnes Tennessee teams. In Texas, he had guys who could shoot. Remember a guy named Kevin Durant? Here, he hasn't had that type of offense or star offensive players. But this year, they seem to be more consistent on the offensive side of the ball. I think Tennessee beats Iowa State to move into the regional final. So where does that bring us to? The regional final. You're going to have Duke against Michigan. I'm sorry. You're going to have St. John's against Michigan State in the East. Again, Izzo against Pitino. It's a coin flip. These two teams, this would be a low scoring game. I'm going to tell you, there'll be a lot of defense played in this game. There'll be a lot of ugly basketball, probably Michigan State and St. John's should they face off. I like St. John's to get to their first Final Four since 1985. And Coach Carnesecca. In the South, I've picked Nebraska to get to the regional final against Houston. You know, as much of a great story as it would be for Nebraska and Fred Hoiberg to get to the Final Four, it might be, look, we've had improbable runs to the Final Four before. Butler, George Mason, VCU. And I'm talking about in recent times, right? Because if you go back in the days, you had years where Jacksonville was there, Davidson was there, Providence was there. This might be as unlikely a run to the Final Four as any of those, even though they're coming out of a major conference. They'd never won an NCAA game before this year. But I think Calvin Sampson's Houston team is just going to be a little bit better. They play great defense. I think they've got a good matchup, a tough matchup with Illinois the other night, but I think a good matchup maybe in the regional final. And I'm going to put Houston in the Final Four out of this bracket, which I had who did I originally have coming out of this bracket? I think it was Houston. So you got Houston and St. John's. On the other side of the bracket, in the Midwest, you're going to have Michigan against Tennessee. Tennessee's little run comes to an end here. Michigan's good. Dusty May's going to have taken his second team to the Final Four in 4 years. And I don't see any stopping them right now. They may be the only number one. And I think Arizona. We'll see. Let me see what that Arizona matchup looks like in a second. But I really like Michigan to get to the Final Four here with Dusty May over Tennessee. And then out west, you've got Arizona will match up against Purdue. I think Purdue might be the worst matchup Arizona could have hoped for. Again, look at these coachings. I mentioned Patino against Izzo. Calvin Sampson against Fred Hoiberg, a rising star against not quite a legend, but certainly an accomplished veteran. Okay. Dusty May, certainly a rising star in the sport against an old warhorse in Rick Barnes. And then you've got Tommy Lloyd, a rising star at Arizona, against Matt Painter, who's been there quite a while now. I remember when Matt Painter was in Tommy Lloyd's shoes. Well, not so much different shoes, because he replaced his mentor in Gene Keady at Purdue. But the way Purdue plays basketball, it might be Arizona's worst nightmare. They're a balanced team. They play good defense. Their offense is efficient, especially inside. But Purdue's going to be able to defend inside, and they have trouble shooting from the outside. It's going to be a battle. I think Arizona finds a way to win. So we get two number ones into the Final Four, Michigan and Arizona. We get a number 4 in – did I pick – no, Houston. Sorry, number 2 in Houston. And a number 5 in St. John's getting to the Final Four. St. John's would play Houston, which we'll talk about later on. After next week, we'll have those matchups, right? So I'm not going to pick those right now. But right now, I've got Houston playing against St. John's and Arizona against Michigan in a couple of games that will be just outstanding in my mind. What else? A lot of fun, man. I'm telling you, there are just some great matchups here. I love the coaching matchups. Again, you've got rising stars against, grizzled veterans. Great stories. Nebraska, Iowa would both be big stories. St. John's returning to glory and getting back to the. I mean, Louis Carnesecca, for all of the accolades that he gets, and he deserves, he got the one Final Four. And that brings up an interesting point. And I thought about this the other day, and I wish some of our St. John's friends were with us tonight. And if you're out there, Matt Brust and some others, speak up. And if you're out there, I'll even bring you on the show. I'm a little curious. And again, I don't mean any disrespect at all to Louis Carnesecca. He did a great job at St. John's. Now, I mean, this is a little Catholic school in the middle of New York. Not an easy place to recruit to. Got to play in Madison Square Garden. Got to play in the Big East. Before that, the ECAC wasn't, where everybody wanted to go play basketball. They wanted to go to, they wanted to go to UCLA, and they wanted to go to North Carolina, and they wanted to go wherever. These city kids left to go south and west and the Midwest. But Louis was revered, even as they had great teams, really good teams, that didn't advance, past the Sweet 16, sometimes into the Elite Eight, but not to the Final Four, except one time. But Louis revered, and rightfully so. But other coaches, like Jim Boeheim was vilified, even by Syracuse fans a lot of times. Even after he won, until he won in 2003, I think it was, with Jerry McNamara, by the way, as a freshman point guard, and Carmelo Anthony. Before he won, he was just, again, vilified as the village idiot a lot of times, as he was the thing holding Syracuse basketball back. And I'm not sure he ever quite got his due in the 47 years that he spent there. I don't know how it's interesting how we look at guys like Jim Boeheim and Louis Carnesecca differently. Both great coaches. I think in retrospect, Jim Boeheim, in hindsight, looking at his career, you come to regard it a lot differently maybe than you did as you were living it if you're a Syracuse fan. And again, I'm not a fan of either team. As a basketball fan, though, here, living in upstate New York, I rooted for Syracuse in a lot of situations and rooted for St. John's in a lot of situations. And I never quite understood the Boeheim, the angst against Jim Boeheim. And Louis was just a lovable little guy, but a great basketball coach. So don't you guys, any of you St. John, Matt, don't think I'm putting your mentor down, believe me. Does Syracuse women's coach have a right to be pissed with her pairing against UConn again in Connecticut? They weren't going to play it at Syracuse. Again, the women's bracket, that's a good question, Rick. And hopefully we're going to get some better matchups here. But they can't fill arenas, right? So they're not going to be able to play all these games. I don't know. Are they playing? Maybe. Let me find the story here on this. I gotta refresh myself on what she's pissed off about. She's upset for consistently putting her teams in UConn sub-regional in stores. For us to do what we've done continuously, I have to come to UConn and every school I go to from Buffalo to. So she's saying it's. Did it have some vendetta against her? She's not even just talking about Syracuse. Every single school that I go to, from Buffalo to Syracuse, it's unfair to young people. No. What would she want? The Orange have had to face the Huskies in the second round of both tournament berths under Leggett Jack, and 5 of the program's past 7 appearances overall. I think unlike the men's tournament, I think some of the big teams get a little bit more of an advantage playing regionally, right? I mean, 3 of those games took place on UConn's home court, for instance, is what she's complaining about. Again, it's a business, right? And I think they need to put bodies in the seats. And I think I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I think on the women's side, I think they feel the need to get teams much closer, if not on their home court, then as close to their home court as they can, so that teams can travel. Because I don't think teams are going to travel across the country as well as they do, I'm sorry, on the other side of this conversation. We're talking about the men. She talks about after 37 years of being in this business and have to come and be in this particular bracket every freaking year is unacceptable. It's wrong. Put us on a 10 line, whatever. But she'd be screaming the other way. If she got a 10 seed, she'd be screaming about that. I guarantee you. This feels a little disingenuous. Don't say, give us a 10 seed so we don't have to see Connecticut. I mean, what? I think they're looking at matchups? Probably. Maybe more so than the men's side. The men's side, with 64 teams, you can only do so much to keep teams away from each other. If she got sent out west, do you think she'd been happy about that and bet a 10 seed like she says? Maybe a 10 seed. She'd be crying about that. So she says, I'm sorry, the article says, while following seed order, one of the NCAA committee's seeding principles is that teams are placed as close to home as possible to maximize fan accessibility. Just what I just said. The committee listed Princeton, another nearby program to the Huskies, as the 34th overall seed, and Syracuse is 36. I don't know, Rick. Go out and win games. How about that? How about we don't, and again, I would say this if it was men, women, whatever it is. It doesn't really matter. Rick Pitino and the men at St. John's, had a perfect right to bitch about being a 5 and sent out to play in the pod in the West when they're in the Eastern bracket. That's more of a disrespect than Syracuse being kept at home in their home region. I guarantee you that she'd be screaming and yelling if she got sent out west and had to play the entire tournament out there. You got to beat UConn at some point. Beat them now. Just go out and play the games. Why don't these guys just go out and play the games? And Rick Pitino and St. John's did just that. Too often these guys are bitching about seeding and the regions that they're put in. And didn't they get beat by 50 some or something? Didn't they get beat by 53 in the NCAA tournament? Yeah, they got beat by 53. What am I talking about? I mean, I just get confused by some of these guys, these coaches. It's not women, it's coaches. Where's the East? Oh crap! They don't even name them East and West. They're just regional brackets 1 through 4. Where are they? Come on, where the hell's Syracuse? I know you're here. Come on, we're out. Come on, well, wherever you are, UConn, Syracuse. Yeah. So they got beat in the second round, as we know. This is one of the worst. You got beat by 53 points. Do you think playing somewhere else would have made up a 53-point deficit? Coach? I mean, really, come on. I mean, all the teams that played here are mostly teams from the East. UConn, Syracuse, Maryland, Southeast too. Fairfield, Howard, and teams down to the Carolinas. You got a few teams from out west. Colorado came here. Iowa State came here. UTSA. Yeah, to me, it's just be quiet, coach. You got beat by 53 points. You're going to bitch about your seeding and where you had to play the game? How about that? That's my take, Rick. Shut up. Anyway. Thanks for getting me on that bracket. Let's look at the women, by the way. Who's still alive in the women's bracket? Because we haven't spent a lot of time on the women's bracket. Let's see who's still alive in the Sweet 16. We got UConn against North Carolina, 1-4, so the seeds hold up. I've talked about the lack of competition. There's really no Cinderellas. So you got 1-4, which is seeds hold up there, UConn and North Carolina. You got 2-6, which isn't anything outrageous, Notre Dame and Vanderbilt, two very strong programs. 1-4 in Region 4, South Carolina and Oklahoma. 3-10. So you got one double-digit seed that advanced into the Sweet 16 in Virginia. They'll play TCU. UCLA to 1-4 Minnesota. 3-2. So in Region 2, the seeds held up 100%. 1, 2, 3, 4. And in Region 3, Texas 1 will play Kentucky, who's a 5. And 3-2. So the seeds nearly held up there. This is my problem. Again, I talked about this a bit on Sunday. And I know I'm going to get myself in trouble again. But there's just not enough unpredictability, even on the men's side, right? There's still, we still got 10 seeds, 9 seeds in there. Even though they're from power conferences, at least there's not a predominance of the seeds holding up. There's so little unpredictability in the NCAA women's side. I mean, Iowa getting beat by Virginia, bit of a surprise. Even Virginia beating Georgia, a bit of a surprise. 10-7, not huge. But the 10 beats the 2. That's the only real, sleeper in this whole thing. I mean, in your top 6, your Sweet 16, you've got 3 teams that aren't a 4 or better seed, which means they would have held serve. I mean, to me, South Carolina and UConn are headed for a collision in the Final Four on their side of the bracket. To me, it looks like LSU and Texas will probably end up on the other side of the bracket. I like UCLA a little bit coming into this tournament. And they could upend LSU. I don't think LSU's had as good a year by their standards. And Kim Malarkey, yes, I know that's not how you say her name, but I will continue to say that name that way. I think that's going to be maybe the best matchup until you get to the UConn South Carolina game. But I got a feeling UConn and South Carolina is going to be for the national championship in the semifinal. Maybe I'll get surprised. Again, check out. I watched Netflix I think it's Netflix, pretty sure, has a great documentary on Gino Auriemma and his UConn program since he's been there. It's really kind of an intriguing watch if you are into that type of thing. I just love documentaries, sports, and pretty much any documentary. Well, not any documentary. Very into political documentaries and sports documentaries, mob documentaries. So. Do I have to look, Rick? Sad New Yorker has Houston in the men's. He's still alive? Let's take a look. Thanks for bringing it up, because with my performance, I probably would have forgot. Let's take a quick look. Rick, my boy, who 2 years ago, Rick won both brackets. Great job. So if we look at the men's bracket, we had 9 entries only. Leading the way right now is Go Blue, which I guess is the Mad New Yorker with 520 points. He has a maximum total of 1720, which is damn good. He's got a 98.4% win rate, if that's Carlos. Great job. Rick is right behind him at 500. He's got a max of 1460 with Arizona as his winner. Utah AK-47, who I haven't figured out who that is yet. I'm probably going to get kicked off the air just for saying it. They have Duke, and they've got a shot at 1640. They're at 480 right now. Neil Bush has Arizona as well, and he's got a chance at 1560. So he could beat you, Rick. So he's got a few different picks than you have. Myself, I am in 5th place right now at 470, but my total is 870. So I'm not even sure if it's possible, although I do have more points remaining than the leaders have. Somehow you'd have to lose like every game but one for me to find a way to win this tournament. Plus, most of my Final Four is blowed up, sir. Oh, there's Mad New Yorker. He's got Michigan. Didn't you say Auburn? Or didn't you say Houston? No, so he's got. So I got that wrong. So I don't know who's that on top. That's actually Brian. Is Go Blue. Brian Art, who's a Michigan fan, actually has Houston winning and is on top of this pool. The Mad New Yorker has got 450 right now. He does have a possibility for 1650, so he can fly up these standings, and he does have Michigan winning it all. Scott Kobe is at 430, does have a potential for 1630 with Arizona left. And I think Donna has 430 with a chance for 1430 with Duke. Probably not a good chance with Utah AK-47 at... that might be AC. I don't know. So there you have it. Rick is in good position to win his second in 2 years. On the women's side, let's see if we go to the women's side. I'm in 5th place there as well. Oh, that's the men again. What happened? There's the women. Women's tournament. I'm in 7th out of 7. Just might, I don't know who ESPN fan is that. Maybe that's, we got a couple of generic ones in there, so I'm not sure who's who. So we have a generic ESPN fan with Connecticut as a champion with 550. Neil with South Carolina obviously is his pick. Is in good shape with 1540. All these top. Everybody's got a chance except for me had a chance for 1700 points. So it's very closely bunched between 550 and the 5th place, which is Brian at 510. Most of us, better than half of this tournament or these picks have UConn as their champion. So very little chance for me to come from behind here either. So blow it up, sir. If you know what movie that's from, feel free to put it up there. Scott Kobe, how are you, my friend? Scott. Yes, I noticed you did very little talking, Scott. I've done very little talking. I've talked about the tournament. Mine's blowed up. I had Gonzaga. Let's just look at we'll look at how bad my bracket is. in reality. And we'll go to the men's bracket. I'm sorry. I know we focus mostly on the men, and I apologize. I don't mean any disrespect to the women. Promise you. Let's look at Keith's bracket. My Final Four. Here's my Sweet 16. How many teams do I have in? I got Duke against St. John's. That's pretty good. I got Michigan State against UConn. That wasn't that hard to pick. That's for picking the chalk. Did I or didn't I? Hold on. Take that back. Yes, I did have Michigan State against UConn. I did not have I had Florida over Michigan. Over who? Who's MCN? Oh, I had McNeese State. I had McNeese getting to the Sweet 16. How bad am I? I had Illinois and Houston. So I do have St. John's in the Final Four. And I do have, where's my Final Four? Jeez, these brackets are so hard to read sometimes on the laptops. Why can't I see? Oh, there it is. So I had Florida over St. John's in the Final Four, so that'll suck. On the other side of the bracket, I had Arizona and Arkansas. Again, really chalk. I had Gonzaga over Purdue, so I got one of the teams in that game. And again, I had Gonzaga over Michigan in the semifinal. So I did have Michigan and Alabama matching up here. So again, chalk. I had Tennessee against Iowa State, so that one's held up pretty good, and just picked the chalk there. So my Final Four, I've got Michigan left, I've got St. John's left, and that is it, Captain. Goodbye. Good night. It's over. Turn out the lights when you're done. Good to have you with us. Good night, Scott. Scott, I talked a lot about the coaching matchups that are just tremendous in this tournament, the men's tournament again. We got some rising stars against grizzled veterans, some grizzled veterans against grizzled veterans. Lots of star power, I think, in this coaching this bundle of coaches that are in the Sweet 16 and will be moving on to the Elite Eight. You've got Elite Eight type matchups in the Sweet 16, and Duke and St. John's and Michigan State and UConn, Illinois and Houston. I mean, they all have a regional final feel to me. So, been a great tournament. Get used to this type of thing, right? I mean, when your outliers are going to be Iowa, Texas, 9 and 10 seeds, this is probably the new reality of what we're going to see. It's going to be very hard for the high points of the world to win more than one game. You'll still get those first round upsets. But me taking McNeese to go 2 games, they had a shot in that first game against Vanderbilt, but didn't have enough to carry them on. The new reality of the transfer portal and the NIL, as I said last week, has really leveled the playing field. Or I'm sorry, unleveled the playing field. These mid-majors who would be so experienced and had played together for 3-4 years, you're not going to see that anymore because those kids are going to move on elsewhere. So the Miami of Ohio's getting to the Sweet 16 like they did with Wally Zerbiak 20 years ago. Geez, maybe more. Those days are over with any regularity, right? You'll see an outlier here or there. I mean, I don't know that you're going to see teams able to get to the tournament 27 straight times like Gonzaga has. Who's got the most Who's got the longest streak right now for NCAA tournament appearances? Longest NCAA basketball tourney streaks. If I'll get what I want here. Kansas holds a record with 28 straight from 90 to 97. That did, however, well, actually, they got a 36-year streak right now. What the hell are they talking about? Right now, they have a 36-year. Why is that? Oh, that's because they had a vacated appearance because of sanctions against them. So if you didn't have that, if you removed it, they had 36 years from 90 to this year. But they do still hold the all-time record, or tied with it, with Michigan State, 28. North Carolina, 27. I think Gonzaga's got 27. But they don't list them. Active streaks. Michigan State, Kansas, all the way down to 7 when you take away that. Boy, I could have swore to Gonzaga. It is 27. What the hell is this? AI. Don't see. You can't trust AI. Michigan State, 28. Gonzaga, 27. Purdue, 11 after that. Houston, 8. Tennessee, 8. These streaks aren't going to be around much anymore. Kansas now only has 7 in a row because of the vacated year. This is the current active streaks, by the way. So the longest streaks in history, Kansas still is involved there. I know Gonzaga is in there. So what, you want AI to do a lot of stuff. I saw a lot of crazy stuff about AI the other night. I was watching Bill Maher on HBO Friday night, and they had a guy who's written a book. I'm sorry, done a documentary, and I got to find this documentary. I wish I could remember the name of it. I'll have to go back and watch real time. By the way, which a show that I find fascinating. So anybody who thinks that I get my news from one place, right? Mine's everywhere. I watch liberal guys like Bill Maher, who actually is an equal opportunity basher these days. So, in any event, I digress. I really funny's funny to me all the time. Bill Maher, I think, is a very, very funny individual, and he has a great show on HBO. Anyway, he had a guy who did a documentary on AI, and it was talking about how AI will find it finds ways to cheat. It finds way to blackmail people when they find out enough about them when they've done research. It will cheat to get what it wants. They've found that if you put AI up against people, so in war games, that AI was like 50 times more likely in war games to take the nuclear option than human beings. Frightening stuff. But anyway, I don't know why I got there. Check that out. I have no idea how I got there. Oh, God. I swear to God, it's not going to be pretty for me the next 20 years. In any event, what time is it? 8:20. We're going to get ready to wrap it up here. We got some great games tomorrow, guys. Enjoy it, because to me, I understand we don't have like Cinderellas to watch, but I think you got some great basketball. You got star power on the sidelines. College basketball has always been, to me, a coaching-driven sport. Going back to Bobby Knight, going back to when I was a kid rooting for Al McGuire. The coaches were the stars of these games, and I think you got a great tournament for those types of guys. Pitino, Izzo, Hurley, young guys like Shire and Lloyd and TJ Olsenberger, Nate Oates. Not exactly a young guy. Rick Barnes, who's been around forever. God, I can remember watching Big East basketball when Rick Barnes and how old are they? I felt like they were as young as I was when I was watching them in the 80s. They had to be a little bit older because they're in their 70s, I think, both of them. But I watched these guys when they're basically kids. What a great Thursday and Friday of basketball we got coming up. I know I left somebody out, and I really apologize. Let me go back and look at these coaching matchups again. I mean, star power? Matt Painter took over for a legend in Gene Keady. Just carried on where he went. Still won a national championship, so he's carried on there as well. McCallum at Iowa, an up-and-comer. Hoiberg, up-and-coming stars. Lloyd. Calipari, I left out. A legend. I'm sorry. Think what you want of Calipari. Think what you want of Rick Pitino. The guys are winners. Yes, they've left a couple places in tatters. I would agree. But polarizing figures, they don't get more polarizing in any sport than Pitino and Calipari. Kelvin Sampson found his road to redemption after flaming out in Indiana, getting fired over sanctions that would be nothing today. Great stories. Nebraska never winning an NCAA game, trying to get to a Final Four this weekend. John Shire up and coming. Dusty May. Oh my God, so much fun. If you're not enjoying this tournament, there's something wrong with you. My bracket's blown up. I'm loving this tournament. And I'm going to love Thursday and Friday. It's going to be a great 2 nights of basketball. Without a... There, guys. We'll be back on Friday morning to wrap up Thursday night's games with Jack and also Friday's games. And we'll have the MLB update. We'll do all our MLB picks. Gotta go watch the Yankees right now, by the way. And Sunday we'll be back in the Stream of Consciousness as well. So we'll see you guys later. Have a great, great night. Bye-bye.